You crack 2 eggs into the pan the same way you have for 50 years. You think it's the safest food in your kitchen, but the way most people over 70 handle that egg is quietly working against their heart, their brain, and their muscles. Here's what I found. The problem is almost never the egg itself. It's 7 small habits: how you store it, how you cook it, which part you throw away, and every one of them is something your grandmother never did. She treated an egg like something precious. We treat it like something disposable. I'm going to walk you through all 7, and I'm going to end on the strangest one, a preservation method printed in a government farmer's bulletin over 100 years ago that let people keep eggs fresh for 8 months with no refrigerator at all. You can do it this week in your own kitchen with what you already own. This started for me on a cold morning last winter. I was standing in my sister's kitchen watching her rinse a carton of eggs under the tap before putting them in the fridge the way our mother always did, and something nagged at me. Because I'd just read that in most of the world, washing an egg is considered one of the worst things you can do to it. That little moment at the sink is what sent me down this whole trail. So let me start where I started, because the first thing I uncovered changed how I look at an egg completely. There is a thin, invisible coating on the outside of every fresh egg. Farmers call it the bloom. The proper name is the cuticle. When a hen lays an egg, she seals it with this natural layer, a microscopic varnish that closes off the thousands of tiny pores in the shell and keeps bacteria out and moisture in. It is the egg's own suit of armor, and the hen provides it for free. Now here's what stopped me. When my sister ran that egg under warm water, she was scrubbing that armor straight down the drain. And she had no idea. Nobody told her. Nobody told me either. I went looking for how far back this knowledge goes, and I found it sitting in a book from 1861. Isabella Beeton, in her famous Book of Household Management, told English housewives never to wash an egg until the moment you intend to use it, because washing, in her words, hastened its decay. Over a century and a half ago, a woman running a Victorian household understood something most people in modern kitchens have completely forgotten, and the science backs her up cold. In the United States, commercial eggs are washed and sanitized by law before they reach the store, which strips that natural coating, and that is exactly why American eggs must be refrigerated. But in much of Europe, eggs are never washed. The bloom stays intact, and they sit unrefrigerated on a shelf for weeks. Same egg. 2 completely different rules. The only difference is whether that invisible armor is still there. So, the first silent mistake is simple. If you buy farm eggs or eggs from a neighbor with a coating still on them, do not wash them until the minute you crack them. And if you buy them from a regular store, understand they've already lost their armor, which makes how you store them next far more important than you think. But that raised a bigger question in my mind. If washing damages the egg, then where you put it afterward must matter too. And that's where I found the second mistake, the one hiding in the most obvious place in your kitchen, the door of your refrigerator. Almost every fridge built in the last 60 years has a neat little molded rack in the door, shaped perfectly to hold eggs. It looks like the manufacturer is telling you where eggs belong. And millions of us over 70 have kept our eggs there our entire adult lives because that's what the shelf was built for. It is the worst spot in the entire refrigerator. Here's why, and it took me a while to understand it. The door is the one part of your fridge that gets warm every single time you open it. Every time you reach for the milk, warm kitchen air floods that door shelf. The temperature swings up and down all day long. And an egg that has already lost its protective bloom is extremely sensitive to those swings. Each warm up and cool down pulls air and moisture through those open pores and speeds up spoilage from the inside. The United States Department of Agriculture recommends eggs be kept at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, held steady. Steady is the key word. The back of the middle shelf holds that steady cold. The door never does. So, people over 70, the very people whose immune systems have a harder time fighting off foodborne bacteria than they did at 40, are keeping their eggs in the one spot most likely to let those eggs go bad. There's something else I learned that surprised me. You should keep eggs in their original carton, not in that pretty fridge tray. The carton does two jobs at once. It shields the eggs from absorbing odors and flavors through those pores because, yes, an egg will drink in the smell of last night's fish or a cut onion right through its shell. And the carton keeps them stored the right way up, which brings me to a detail so small almost nobody knows it. Store your eggs pointy end down. The rounded end has a small air pocket inside, and keeping that pocket up at the top keeps the yolk centered and away from the shell where bacteria could reach it. Every egg carton is designed to hold them this way, and most people flip them without a second thought. Your grandmother did it by instinct. We do the opposite by accident, so now the eggs are stored right. But storing them was only the beginning, because the moment I started looking at what happens in the pan, I found something far more serious than spoilage. This next one is the mistake I think is doing the quietest, deepest harm of all, and it hides inside a breakfast that looks perfectly healthy. For decades, we were told the danger in an egg was the cholesterol. That's the whole reason a generation of people learned to fear the yolk. But what I dug up flips that story on its head. The problem was never really how much cholesterol was in the egg. The problem is what happens to that cholesterol when you cook it too hard, too hot, for too long. When you fry an egg in a screaming hot pan until the edges go brown and crispy, or when you scramble it into dry, rubbery curds over high heat, the cholesterol inside begins to oxidize. Oxidized cholesterol has a name in the research world, oxysterols. And these are not the same as the ordinary cholesterol that gets unfairly blamed. Oxysterols are the damaged, rancid form, and study after study links them to inflammation in the blood vessels and to the buildup that stiffens and narrows arteries. Let that sink in for a second. Two people can eat the exact same egg. One cooks it gently, one blasts it in a hot pan until it's brown and crisp. The gentle egg delivers protein and nutrients. The blasted egg delivers a dose of oxidized cholesterol that the gentle one never had. Same egg. The heat made the difference. And here's the part that matters most for anyone over 70, because aging arteries are already working harder than young ones. The way you cook the egg is doing more to your heart than the egg ever did on its own. So what did people used to do before high heat and non-stick pans and cranking the burner to save 2 minutes? They cooked eggs low and slow. A soft-boiled egg simmered gently. A poached egg slipped into water below the boil. Scrambled eggs stirred patiently over low heat until they were just barely set and still soft and glossy. A soft egg is not just tastier. It protects the very thing inside it that we were once told to fear. The rule I took from this is plain. Keep the heat low. Keep the yolk soft when you can. Never let an egg go brown, crispy, or rubber dry. Gentle cooking keeps the cholesterol in its healthy form, keeps the protein easier to digest, and keeps the delicate nutrients from being destroyed. And that word, destroyed, leads me straight into the fourth mistake, because there is a nutrient in the yolk so important and so easily wasted that finding out what most people do with it genuinely upset me. They throw the yolk in the trash. Somewhere along the line, a whole generation was taught that the virtuous thing to do was order an egg white omelet and pour the yolk down the sink. The yellow was the enemy, the white was the health food. I believed a version of this myself for years. I was completely wrong, and here's the evidence that turned me around. Almost everything valuable in an egg lives in the yolk. The white is mostly protein and water. But the yolk holds the choline, the vitamin D, the vitamin A, the healthy fats, and two nutrients called lutein and zeaxanthin. Those two are the ones I want you to remember, because they matter enormously as we age. Lutein and zeaxanthin are the pigments that give the yolk its golden color, and they collect in two places in your body, the back of your eyes and your brain. In the eye, they build up in the macula, the exact spot that breaks down in age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of vision loss in older people. Researchers at Harvard and at Tufts University have studied these carotenoids for years and linked higher levels to better protection against that decline. And the egg yolk is one of the most absorbable sources of them on Earth because they come bundled with the natural fat that helps your body actually take them in. Then there's choline. This is the one almost nobody talks about. Choline is a building block your brain uses to make acetylcholine, a messenger chemical tied directly to memory. Most people over 70 do not get enough of it. The egg yolk is one of the richest, cheapest, most available sources of choline there is. And people are pouring it down the drain because a decades-old fear told them to. So the fourth mistake costs you your eyes and your memory, one discarded yolk at a time. Eat the whole egg. The yolk isn't the part to fear. It's the part that was protecting you all along. But that left me with an uncomfortable question. If the yolk is that good for us, if it protects the aging eye and feeds the aging brain, then why on earth did so many of us spend 30 years afraid of it? Who told us to be scared? That question is where this investigation stopped being about cooking and started being about something else entirely, because the fear of the egg didn't come from nowhere. Back in the late 1960s and into the 1970s, official dietary advice began warning people to cut back sharply on eggs, blaming the cholesterol in the yolk for the cholesterol in our blood. The message was everywhere. Doctors repeated it. Breakfast changed in millions of homes. People who had eaten eggs every morning of their lives suddenly felt guilty doing it. And here's what I found digging into the reversal. The science that justified that fear turned out to be far weaker than anyone admitted at the time. It turns out the cholesterol you eat has a much smaller effect on the cholesterol in your blood than they claimed, because your own liver makes most of your cholesterol and simply adjusts its own production when you eat more or less. For most people, the egg was never the villain. It took until 2015 for the official United States dietary guidelines to quietly drop the strict daily cholesterol limit that had scared people off eggs for decades. Quietly. There was no big apology, no headline telling every 75-year-old who'd given up their favorite breakfast that they could have it back. The warning arrived like a thunderclap, and the correction slipped out like a whisper. So think about who spent those decades afraid. If this kind of buried, practical knowledge is something you want more of, the real story behind everyday foods and the habits that protect you as you age, I've put a great deal of it together in my books, Start Strong, Senior Mastery, and Senior System. They're written for exactly the person watching this. Someone who wants the evidence, not the marketing, and who is ready to take back control of their health with simple, affordable changes. You'll find the details in the description below. Now, back to that silent correction that never came with a headline. People your age. People who did exactly what they were told, gave up a cheap and perfect food, and often replaced it with sugary cereals and processed low-fat products that did far more harm than a yolk ever could. That is the real cost of the fifth mistake, avoiding the egg entirely out of a fear that was already crumbling. If you're one of the people who gave eggs up and never went back, this is your permission, backed by the guidelines themselves, to bring them home. And now that we're clear the egg was wrongly accused, I can tell you about the sixth mistake, because eating the whole egg is not quite enough. How you eat it decides how much of that goodness your body can actually use, and this is where most people leave half the benefit on the plate without knowing it. I want to talk directly now to the person watching this who's thinking none of it applies to them. Maybe you live alone. Maybe you cook for one on a small budget, in a small kitchen, with no fancy pans and no interest in complicated recipes. Maybe you think eating well is something for people with money and time and someone to shop for them. This next part is built specifically for you because it costs nothing extra and takes not 1 minute more. Here's what I learned about getting the most out of an egg. Those precious Nutrients in the yolk, the lutein, the zeaxanthin, the vitamin D and A are fat soluble. That means your body can only absorb them properly when there's a little fat present at the same time. The good news is the yolk already brings its own fat, so a whole egg is well designed. But you can do even better. Eat your eggs alongside something with a bit of healthy fat, and you dramatically increase how much your body takes in. A slice of avocado, a little olive oil, a few slices of cheese. Even cooking gently in a small amount of real butter or olive oil rather than a dry non-stick pan helps carry those nutrients into you. There's research on exactly this. A study out of Purdue University found that when people ate vegetables like a salad together with whole eggs, their bodies absorbed several times more of the protective carotenoids from that whole meal than when they ate the salad with no egg at all. Read that again. The egg didn't just deliver its own nutrients, it acted like a key that unlocked the nutrients in the other food on the plate. One cheap egg added to your vegetables multiplied the value of the whole meal. So here is the technique you can use tomorrow morning, alone, with nothing new to buy. Cook 1 or 2 whole eggs gently in a little olive oil or butter over low heat. Keep the yolk soft. Eat them together with whatever vegetables you have, a sliced tomato, some spinach wilted in the same pan, a bit of leftover salad. That single plate now protects your eyes, feeds your brain, and pulls more nutrition out of every other thing on it. No specialist, no expensive supplement, no trip to the store for anything unusual. Just the oldest breakfast in the world, cooked the way it was cooked before we complicated it. And the reason this matters so much after 70 brings me to the 7th mistake, the one about protein and the quiet muscle loss almost nobody warns you about until it's already stealing your independence. There is a condition called sarcopenia. It's the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength that comes with age, and it is one of the biggest reasons older people lose their balance, have falls, and slip from living independently into needing help. After about the age of 60, we start losing muscle faster every year unless we actively fight it. And the two things that fight it are movement and protein. Here's the mistake. Many people over 70 simply don't eat enough protein, and worse, they eat almost none of it at breakfast. A piece of toast, a bit of jam, a cup of tea, and that's the morning. Then they wonder why they feel weak by afternoon. Your body cannot store protein the way it stores fat. It needs a fresh delivery spread across the day to keep rebuilding muscle, and the morning is the meal most people get wrong. Now, here's why the egg is close to perfect for this. And it comes down to a word scientists use, bioavailability. It's a measure of how well your body can actually use the protein in a food. For years, the egg was treated as the gold standard against which all other proteins were measured, scoring at or near the very top. The protein in an egg is almost completely usable by your body, and it comes in a soft, easy to chew, easy to digest package, which matters enormously for older people who struggle with tougher meats or have trouble chewing. But I found one more twist even here, and it ties every part of this investigation together. Remember how I told you gentle cooking protects the cholesterol? It turns out cooking matters for the protein too, in the opposite direction from what you'd guess. Raw eggs, the kind some people still swallow thinking they're getting pure nutrition, are actually poorly digested. Studies measuring protein absorption found that your body uses only around half the protein from a raw egg, but over 90% of the protein from a cooked one. Cooking unlocks the protein, but cook it too hard and hot, and you start oxidizing the cholesterol we talked about. So the whole thing lands on a single, beautiful sweet spot. Cook the egg, but cook it gently, soft-boiled, poached, or softly scrambled over low heat. That one method protects the cholesterol from oxidizing, keeps the delicate eye and brain nutrients intact, and makes the muscle-building protein almost completely available to your body all at the same time. Every one of the 7 mistakes points back to the same simple truth. treat the egg gently, eat all of it, and eat enough. But there's one more thing I promised you at the very start, and it's the strangest and best discovery of the whole trail. Because knowing how to cook and store an egg is one thing. What I found buried in a government document from over a century ago is something almost nobody alive today knows how to do, and it could change how you think about keeping food in your home entirely. I kept coming back to one question while I was researching all of this. Before refrigerators, before every home had a cold, humming box in the kitchen, how did people keep eggs through the winter when hens stop laying and eggs grow scarce? A hen slows right down in the cold months. So how did a farm family in 1890, with no electricity, eat eggs in January? The answer sent me into the old agricultural records, and I found it. The method was called water glassing, and it was so common, so trusted, that the United States Department of Agriculture published instructions for it in their farmers' bulletins, teaching ordinary households how to preserve their own eggs at home. During the First World War, when food had to be stretched in every kitchen, homemakers across the country were doing this as a matter of course. Then refrigeration arrived, the stores never closed, and within a couple of generations the knowledge simply vanished. Grandmothers who did it every autumn stopped teaching it because nobody needed it anymore. It didn't die because it failed. It died because we got comfortable. Here's how it worked, and here's why it's almost magic. You take fresh eggs, and this is the crucial part, unwashed eggs with that natural bloom still on the shell, the very armor I told you about at the beginning. You place them gently, pointy end down, into a crock or a large glass jar. Then you cover them completely in a solution made from something called pickling lime, food-grade calcium hydroxide dissolved in water. The lime solution seals the shell from the outside, sealing every last pore, stopping air and bacteria from getting in, and locking the egg in a kind of suspended animation, and it lasts. Eggs preserved this way stayed good for 6, 8, even 12 months, sitting in a cool corner of the pantry with no refrigeration whatsoever. People pulled them out in the dead of winter and cooked with them as though they'd been laid that morning. The whole investigation had come full circle. The very same natural coating a Victorian housewife knew not to wash off in 1861 was the thing that made this century-old preservation method work. Now think about what that means for you today. If you ever buy fresh, unwashed farm eggs from a market, a neighbor, a roadside stand, you don't have to let them go to waste, and you don't have to cram your fridge full. With a jar, some water, and food-grade pickling lime you can order for a few dollars. You can keep them fresh for the better part of a year, on a shelf, using zero electricity, exactly the way people did through 2 world wars. It's cheap. It's simple. It's real. And it was hiding in a government bulletin the whole time, waiting for someone to dig it back out. That's the thing I keep coming back to. None of what I found was invented in a laboratory last year. Every piece of it was ordinary knowledge once the unwashed shell, the steady cold, the gentle heat, the whole yolk, the fat that unlocks the nutrients, the protein that holds your muscles together, the lime that stops time. Our grandparents knew it in their hands and their habits. We didn't lose it because it stopped working. We lost it because someone was always ready to sell us a replacement, and because the corrections to bad advice never come with the same trumpets as the warnings did. So here's what this whole trail really gave me, and what I hope it gives you. It handed back a little bit of independence, the quiet confidence that the simplest food in your kitchen, treated the way people once treated it, is still one of the most powerful things you can put on your plate for your heart, your eyes, your memory, and your strength. You're the kind of person who wants the evidence, not the marketing. You didn't take the easy answer. You followed this all the way to the end because you'd rather understand something than just be told what to do. That's exactly the kind of person these old methods were made for. So let me ask you one thing, and I really do want your answer. Did you grow up keeping your eggs in the door of the fridge the way almost all of us did, or did someone in your family already know to keep them in the carton on the shelf? Tell me in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from, because I'm always amazed how far these forgotten kitchen habits traveled. If you gave up eggs for years because of the old cholesterol scare, I especially want to hear that too. And if you want to keep digging with me, this is the place for it. There's a whole group of us here quietly recovering the everyday knowledge that got buried under products and fees and needless complication, and the next thing I've been chasing is even stranger. It's about a single ingredient sitting in almost every kitchen cupboard that our grandmothers used to keep bread fresh for 2 weeks without a scrap of plastic. I found where the method came from, and I can't wait to show you. Stay with me, and let's dig it out together. And here's the strangest part. Inside the Wise Living Circle, I pick up right where this video stopped and show you, step by step, how eggs stayed fresh 8 months without refrigeration. In there, you can ask me your own question, and I answer myself, a real person, never a machine. You're not alone, you belong here with us. Just point your phone at the code on screen. Cancel anytime, one click, no risk.